Yeah. Hello. So, I'm now currently working on this sketch of Sam Monroe. And I may or may not finish before it's bedtime. See, I have to be at work at 3:15 a.m. Isn't that fun? But in the meantime, I is sure that some other content did get uploaded today. The earlier part of the day, I spent reading about nitrification, watching videos about the old Chesapeake Bay there. So, the nitrogen cycle is a normal and natural cycle. But when you have industrial scale agriculture occurring, well, that can get messy. And what happens basically is algal blooms grow out of control. This causes less sunlight to percolate to the bottom, causes things like the die-off of oysters. And when the oysters die, that affects the fish populations, etc. Because that leads to an even further escalation of the algal growth because the oysters help to clear that out. And so when one species is screwed up, the other species is also screwed up, and you get these massive dead zones. And some guy named Gilbert, in that article that I linked to, said, "The Chesapeake Bay is not the only place facing such problems. Similar events are happening off the coast of China and in many parts of Europe. We're seeing this all over the world. More blooms, more often, lasting longer in many, many places. These trends are consistent with increased nitrogen loads," said Gilbert. "These trends are consistent. I'm insistent on the fact that they're consistent with nitrogen loads. Global warming may play a factor, but we have to look at the absolutely balls-to-the-wall obvious shit of nitrogen. Wouldn't you say that's a tad fucking obvious?" The blue crab, which the Chesapeake Bay was renowned for, is not really quite as readily available as it once was because of the decimated populations of marine life in the area. In fact, it's so decimated that I think when Alex Pardone went down there to talk with the hydrologist, they had to eat a Chesapeake, had to eat the blue crab imported from goddamn Thailand, which again, to all you global warming people, means that it's being driven from all the way out yonder. Now, I'm not just trying to pick on the global warming crowd. I'm just saying that there are a lot of environmental issues that just get ignored and bypassed, and I'm well tired of it. Maybe I should look up that actual article here. This is on Baynet.com, the #1 news source in Southern MD, which I suppose stands for Maryland. You can get bent if it doesn't. Harmful algal blooms more frequent in the Chesapeake Bay. This is from 2015. A recent study of harmful algal blooms in the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries by the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. It's environmentalists. Shows a marked increase in these ecosystem disrupting events in the past 20 years that are being fed by excess nitrogen runoff from the watershed. While algal blooms have long been of concern, this study is the first to document their increased frequency in the bay. The study focused on 3 of the most common microscopic algae in the Chesapeake Bay that can produce toxic or nuisance conditions when they become very abundant. These are commonly known as harmful algal blooms, or HABs, H-I-B-S, 2 are caused by dinoflagellate species Pororocentrum minimum and Chalrodinium veneficum, like a ficus but with a veno. Third by cyanobacteria, sometimes called blue-green algae. Blah blah. Blah 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 blah. These blooms, also found worldwide, are more likely in the summer, produce a toxin that has been implicated in fish kill events in the Chesapeake Bay, as well as associated with failure of oyster spawning and development. Cha-ching. Got no oysters there. The frequency of blooms of cyanobacteria in the tidal waters of the Chesapeake estuary has increased from about 13 per year in the 1990s to 23 in the 2000s. Cyanobacteria are the major cause of harmful algal blooms, or HABs, in freshwater environments. A rapidly expanding global problem that threatens human and ecosystem health. So when we're talking about fisheries, it's not just like, oh, the hoity-toity folk are going to go out and get their blue crab. It's what you fucking eat. You need food. You dumbass. These are important things to pay attention to, which is why I decided to start writing books about these things. When people talk to me about being a fucking psychopath or a nut or some such thing, you don't want to be getting your food from fucking China. You don't want to have to deliver it from there. You don't want that supply chain to be fucking vulnerable. That's why we need to have strong fisheries and strong agriculture in a balance. And that's why, so regulation is necessary. Sometimes the government is necessary, you psychopaths. And you're not helping matters by alienating the dumbasses that make this argument of all government is bad by taxing something as dubious as carbon. Fuck! Is it that goddamn difficult to be rational? Do you understand me? Shit! Anyhow, there is a relationship with nutrients. As we change the nitrogen to phosphorus ratio, we tend to create opportunities for these species to bloom, said study author Pat Gilbert. Professor! That's the guy that made that quote that I mentioned at the beginning. He's a goddamn professor at the Cunning University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, Horn Point Laboratory. We need to pay more attention to reducing nitrogen. We've made some progress, but still have efforts to go. The Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries have long been suffering from harmful algae blooms caused by excess nutrients running off the land, due largely to continually growing population in the Baltimore-Washington corridor and the development of animal and plant agriculture. I don't necessarily see anything about global fucking warming there in its watershed. The harmful algae blooms addressed in this paper are happening in addition to the usual spring and summer temperature-dependent blooms that result in dead zones in the bay. The increasing frequency and intensity of these harmful algae blooms will impact our ability to achieve the ultimate goal of restoring a healthy ecosystem in the bay and put a premium on effective methods to reduce nutrient pollution, said Don Bosch. How do you say a name that's spelled B-O-E-S-C-H? Bosch! President of the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. This study points to the need for continued efforts to reduce the amount of nitrogen running off the land in the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries. And that's something that's difficult to do, as per a documentary that I recently watched.
Back in the rivers. Sewers used to be the biggest problem, but they're also in some ways the easiest to fix because there's one pipe. You fix what goes on in that one pipe and cleaner water comes out. So sewers have really been tackled as a source. Stormwater and farms are the two things that really haven't been tackled as much. Because that requires a lot of little fixes in a lot of places, and it's really expensive. I mean, think about if you're a farmer, fencing off part of your land so the cows can't get close to your stream. Well, that's expensive because your cows can't graze in this place where they used to. If you're a city, you think about, well, what if we got rid of all the asphalt and parking lots and replaced it with gravel so the water filters down more naturally? Well, that's extremely expensive. And so you're asking people in those two cases to make sacrifices that are very expensive for a bay that often is very distant to them. I mean, think about farmers. Some of them, the bay watershed goes up to Pennsylvania. So if you're in the middle of Pennsylvania and somebody says, look, you got to, take this big cost in your farm because the Chesapeake Bay, 300 miles away, needs to be cleaner, you can see why that'd be sort of an unpopular idea.
I'll just explain it to you because I'm too fucking lazy to edit, and it takes like 3 hours for it to render on my shitty hardware because no one will donate to my fucking Patreon. Here we go! Let's talk about this shit. Okay, so farmers, I also sympathize with because farmers are running a business, and that business is very important because it also feeds people and also provides jobs and things of that nature. So when you're telling a farmer that lives very, very far inland in, like, say, Pennsylvania, that he needs to put like a very expensive gravel bed or something so that nitrogen doesn't flow out into the Chesapeake Bay and kill the crabs, he's going to look at you like you're a fucking nut. So this is a very complicated issue. It's going to really, really need a lot of eyes on it, and we need to all stop being insane and banding about our favorite pet ideologies. Do we not? Goodbye.